Hey everybody, it's Laura here of makingcardsisan.com, and in today's card making video tutorial, I'll be showing you how to create an embossed ombre or gradient background featuring WOW embossing powder and Sunny Studio stamps. I'm starting out by picking out one of the border stamps from the background basic stamp set from Sunny Studio Stamps, and I'm inking that up with Versamark ink. I'm using my MISTI tool since it's easy to line up that border stamp perfectly. So I'm pressing down the stamp to get a clean, crisp stamped image. And then I'll be using the Atlantic Sea Spray embossing powder from WOW to add some color. I'll be creating an ombre or gradient look, so I'm starting out with my lightest color on the bottom, and then I'll be working my way up with darker colors. So this is just a lovely light blue color with a gold shimmer or gold glitter in it. It's a really fabulous color, and it's a really nice, cool shade of blue. Then after sprinkling on that embossing powder, I'm stamping the second border. So I didn't heat set the embossing powder yet since my stamp isn't touching the powder, so you should be fine. Here I am only sprinkling on the embossing powder partially, so I'm not covering up the whole border. So I'm also going to use the Under the Sea embossing powder to actually add some color and some glitter. So then I just have to switch up the way I'm holding my card since you don't want the embossing powder to mix. I also funneled each color back in the jar individually since I didn't want my colors to mix. Of course, you can totally use different embossing powders to create your own powder, but this time I wasn't planning on doing that. Next, I'm heat setting my embossing powder since I wanted to place the magnets of my MISTI tool on that bottom portion to hold down my card. So after stamping the border once more, I'm sprinkling on the Under the Sea embossing powder again. Then I stamped the border once more and moved on to Long Island Teal embossing powder from WOW, which is the darkest color. It's like a really gorgeous, more of a darker shade of turquoise with gold glitter in. So all of these embossing powders have gold glitter, so that's why I thought they matched together beautifully. And these shades just also really work nice together since they're just from the same color family, and it's just a really lovely combination. So then for my final border, I also just sprinkled on the darkest embossing powder partially. Then I am using the lightest shade again to finish off this background and to finish my ombre. I decided to use a little bit of that light teal on the top of this card as well. So I'm heat setting all of this embossing powder and you'll immediately see the gorgeous gold sparkle. It's hard to capture on camera, but it's just really beautiful when you see it in person. I'm trimming down this piece to 4" by 5¼ inch. And then I picked out some of the stamps from the Beach Babies stamp set from Sunny Studio Stamps. I positioned those and picked those up with my MISTI tool, and then I'm inking these up with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. For the bathing suit of this little girl, I'm using BG13, BG32, and BG11. I decided to use the same turquoise or pool colors that I used for the background, so I want all of the colors to match. I use a dark shade first, then I move on to my mid-tone, and then finally I use the lightest color to add some highlights to the shading. Then for the girl's face and skin, I'm using E53 and E50. Then I noticed that I actually had to use another color just to add a little bit more dimension, so I decided to use the E000 color, which is a really light shade, and it really worked nicely with the two other colors I used. Then I'm also using R11 to add some blush or some rosy cheeks on this little image. And then for the arms, the tummy, and her little legs, I'm also using E53, E50, and E000. Next, it's time to color the hair, which was my favorite part. I am using some darker shades of brown for her hair. I'm using E27, E57, and E55. And I use these feathering motions with my Copic marker, which makes it really easy to blend everything together. I repeated these steps twice in order to get some nice shading, and I really like how it turned out. Then for the sandcastle, I'm using E57, E55, and E53. And I also just wanted to quickly mention that I highly recommend checking out a free Copic coloring class from Kit and Clowder. I will link to it in my blog post, so make sure to check that out. I actually learned a lot of that free class, and I think it's definitely worth checking out. So for the little windows and the doors of the sandcastle, I used a really dark shade of brown. I used E27 for that. And then for the other images, I'm using Y04 and Y000. After coloring these images, it's time to cut them out. I'm using the coordinating dies from Sunny Studio Stamps. Of course, you can also use just regular scissors to fuzzy cut the images, whatever works for you. I also die cut a circle out of some white cardstock. I used a circle die cut set from Spellbinders for that. Next, it's time to stamp a sentiment. I am using the Hello Greeting from the Beach Baby stamp set from Sunny Studio Stamps. I first stamped it in black, then I cleaned my stamp and stamped over the black sentiment once more with Versamark ink, and then I sprinkled on some clear embossing powder and heat set it. At first I wanted to just leave it like that, just a black sentiment, but then I decided it needed a little bit of gloss to kind of match with the background that I made. Here I am just adding some glue with my ATG to the back of the embossed piece so I could adhere a piece of Fang Foam to it. I also used some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to adhere the finished panel onto a taffy note card from Basil, which is one of my favorite cardstock colors ever. It's a really beautiful neutral and matches with pretty much any color. Then I'm adhering my circle piece with some foam squares, and I'm also using some foam squares to adhere all of the other images. Then finally, it's time to finish off this card with a little bit of shimmer and shine. I'm using a Spectrum Noir glitter pen to add some sparkle here and there, and then I am using Tonic Crystal Glaze to add some dimension to those images. I'm also going to use some Tonic Nuvo drops to finish off this card and to add just a tiny little embellishment here and there. I'm using White Blizzard's Gray Mists, and I'm also using Duck Egg Blue, which is the lightest color over here. And then I'm also going to use Aquatic Mist, which is my favorite since it's gorgeous shade of pool and then it has some nice glitter in it. So that finishes up my card for this video. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.